The village square was filled with people, their murmurs rising to a deafening hum as Ekwueme stepped forward, his voice cutting through the air like a blade. "He betrayed us all," he declared, pointing at Amma. "She worked against the village, against us, plotting behind our backs. This is her treachery." The crowd gasped, their eyes turning to Amma. Her heart pounded, but she stood tall, trying to steady the anger that surged within her. Ekwueme had come prepared. He held up a bundle of false evidence, things twisted and distorted, to paint her as the enemy. The people, her people, turned their gaze away from her, their faces hardened with disbelief and disgust. Once they had looked at her with admiration, but now there was only suspicion. A harsh, silent judgment settled over her like a heavy blanket, suffocating the air around her. She could feel the sting of their betrayal, their eyes filled with doubt. They had believed Ekwueme's lies without question, and in that moment, she knew that she had lost them. The weight of the villagers' disappointment pressed heavily on her chest. But there was a fire within Amma, a fire that refused to die. Through the crowd's murmur, her lips parted in a whisper so low that only she could hear it. "It's not over yet," she breathed, as if making a vow to the wind. Her heart burned with resolve, her spirit unbroken despite the crushing weight of their judgment. Amma turned away, her steps slow and deliberate, but the elders gathered at the edge of the square spoke in hushed tones, their words sharp and filled with doubt. "She's finished," one muttered. "She cannot fight back against Ekwueme's power. It is over for her." Another elder nodded, shaking his head. "She was once strong, but look at her now, a fallen woman." Amma's steps faltered, the words of the elders echoing in her mind. She wanted to fight back, to scream, but she remained silent. Their doubts would not be the end of her. She would show them, but not today. Out of the corner of her eye, a figure moved, slipping between the shadows like a wisp of smoke. Nana Okoro, the old woman watched the scene unfold, her face unreadable. There was no pity in her eyes, only a knowing. As Amma passed, Nana Okoro's voice reached her ears, low and cryptic. "You're not finished yet," she murmured, her words carrying a weight that made Amma pause. Amma turned, looking at Nana Okoro. For a moment, her curiosity piqued. The old woman's eyes gleamed with an ancient wisdom, as though she knew something that Amma did not. The air around them felt thick with meaning, with untold secrets. Amma's life had been shaped by the bitterness of rivalry. Her father, Kofi, a once respected man, had fallen victim to the cunning of Ekwueme's late mother, a woman whose ambition had known no bounds. She had lied, manipulated, and used her power to strip Kofi of his dignity, leaving him broken. As a young girl, Amma had watched helplessly as her father lost everything, his pride and his place in the village stolen by a woman who cared nothing for justice. The injustice had carved a deep scar within her, a scar that never healed. Every time she saw the man who had once been her father, she saw the betrayal in his eyes, and it fueled her thirst for revenge. Ekwueme had inherited his mother's ruthless nature, using his position as the son of the village leader to further entrench his power. He used lies and deceit to manipulate the villagers, turning them against anyone who dared challenge him. He had made it clear that Amma was his next target, and he would stop at nothing to see her fall. But Amma was no ordinary woman. Though the world had tried to keep her down, she had proven herself strong, wise, and capable. Yet as a woman in a society dominated by men, her abilities were often dismissed. She had fought for her honor and her place, but every victory had been a struggle, and every step forward came with a push to take her 2 steps back. Sophia, her loyal ally and healer, had warned her. "There's no point in fighting," Sophia had said. "The village is lost to him. You are only risking more pain for yourself." But Amma knew better. She would not let the past define her. She would not let Ekwueme's lies and manipulations break her spirit. "I will not retreat," Amma had replied. "This fight is not just for me. It's for the people who believe in justice, who deserve to see the truth." The decision was made, but Amma knew that it wasn't enough to stand up to Ekwueme with her strength alone. She needed something more, something that could change the very course of the village's fate. And that was where Nana Okoro came in. The old woman, shrouded in mystery, had spoken of an ancient power hidden deep within the jungle, a force that could turn the tides in Amma's favor. Nana Okoro had hinted that Amma's destiny was tied to this power, and only by embracing it could she hope to reclaim her place and restore balance to the village. Amma was hesitant at first. The jungle was full of dangers, and its secrets were not easily revealed. But she knew that this was her last chance. There was no turning back. She had to trust Nana Okoro. With a sense of growing resolve, Amma began her preparations. She gathered what she needed, steeling herself for the journey ahead. She would not let fear stop her. Ekwueme had underestimated her, but he would soon learn that she was not so easily broken. The power in the jungle would be hers, and when she returned, the village would have no choice but to bow to the truth. Amma knew she had to be careful. The village was watching her, waiting for her to make a mistake, and she couldn't afford to show her next move. Quietly, she began her preparations, working in secret. Each day she slipped away unnoticed, gathering information from the villages, gossip, overhearing whispers in the marketplace, and watching Ekwueme's every move. She spoke to no one, not even her family, for she knew the time would come when they would question her choices. But she was determined. Her next move had to be unexpected, like a lion pouncing on its prey when it least expected it. Her feet carried her down the familiar path to Nana Okoro's hut. The old woman had lived through many battles, seen many leaders rise and fall, and Amma hoped she would have the wisdom to guide her through this storm. She needed something to change the course of her destiny, something to tip the scales in her favor. Amma stood at the doorway, hesitant for only a moment before stepping inside. Nana Okoro was there, her sharp eyes glinting with knowing. "I knew you would come, Nana," Okoro said without looking up. Her voice was soft, but it held the weight of years. "I need your help," Amma said, her voice steady. "I have to stop him. I can't let him ruin everything." Nana Okoro's gaze softened as she reached into a hidden corner of her hut, pulling out a small, weathered charm. It was no larger than the palm of Amma's hand, a delicate thing wrapped in strands of worn leather. "This charm," Nana Okoro explained, "holds the power to change the future. It can shift the very course of fate, but only if used with clarity, not anger." Amma's heart raced. "I will do whatever it takes. Tell me how to use it." Nana Okoro paused, letting the silence stretch. "Patience," she said. "This charm will only work if you wait for the right moment. Rashness will lead to failure. You must act with a clear heart, free of hate." Amma clenched her fists. Patience? She was tired of waiting, tired of being silenced. But she knew Nana Okoro's wisdom was not to be dismissed lightly. She took the charm into her hand, feeling the weight of it, a weight that felt both heavy and light at the same time. "I will wait," she said, her voice hard with determination. Ekwueme's power continued to grow, his grip tightening on the village. He moved swiftly, crushing any resistance before it could take root. Even the elders, once Amma's strongest supporters, had begun to bow to him, silenced by his threats and promises. His influence stretched far and wide, but he did not see the storm gathering just outside his reach. With every passing day, his confidence grew. He smiled more often now, his words smooth like oil, and the village began to bend to his will. He ruled with force, and his power was unchallenged. At least, that's what he thought. But beneath the surface, Amma was changing. The charm had not yet shown its true power, but Amma's resolve had hardened. She knew that every moment she waited brought her closer to the reckoning. She would not be silenced. Ekwueme began to notice it, though he refused to admit it to himself. There was something in Amma's eyes, something that defied the defeat he had expected. She was not broken. No, she was waiting, watching him with quiet intensity. He began to feel the weight of her gaze at the back of his neck, like the slow creeping of a storm cloud. One evening, as he stood before the council, preparing to silence another dissenting voice, he caught a glimpse of Amma standing at the edge of the crowd. Her face was impassive, but her eyes were full of something he could not place, something dangerous. He dismissed it, his confidence remaining unshaken. Amma had lost. She was broken. But still, a small whisper in his mind began to grow, the sense that she was far from finished. That night, when the council met in secret, Amma slipped in unnoticed. The doors creaked as she entered, and the air grew tense. Ekwueme's voice filled the room, sharp and commanding, but Amma was not afraid. She stood tall, her heart steady, and she spoke. "You speak of justice," she said, her voice clear and strong. "But how much of it have you truly given?" The village was built on lies, on manipulation. The people have forgotten their true power. Ekwueme's face remained unreadable, but his fists clenched at his sides. The council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Amma's words had struck a chord. She continued, her voice growing bolder. "You are not the true leader of this village. The people are. And it is time they remember that." Her words hung in the air like a challenge. Some of the council members looked away, unwilling to meet her gaze. Others shifted nervously, the seeds of doubt planted in their hearts. Ekwueme's eyes darkened. The room was silent. For a moment, he did not speak. Then he leaned forward, his expression calm, but his voice cold as ice. "There are many things you don't understand," he said, his tone low. "You think you can sway the council with words, but you cannot change what has already been decided." Amma did not flinch. Her heart pounded, but her resolve was unshaken. She had planted the seed. The rest was up to time. As Amma walked out of the council room, the charm in her pocket began to glow faintly, a soft light pulsing against her side. She stopped for a moment, feeling the warmth of it. The time was coming. The power was beginning to stir. Soon, she would have what she needed to bring Ekwueme down. The village would have no choice but to listen to the truth. The charm had spoken its first warning. The final move was drawing closer. The villagers gathered, their excitement buzzing, like the hum of 1,000 bees. It was the feast they had been waiting for, the grand celebration of Ekwueme's victory. The drums beat in rhythm, and the air was filled with the smell of roasted meats and rich spices. Everyone believed the battle was over. They expected Amma to be absent, defeated and broken, hiding in shame. But Amma had a different plan. As the Aitsi feast began, Amma made her entrance. The chatter died down as she stepped forward, her head held high. Nana Okoro walked beside her, the two women moving with a quiet power. Amma wore a ceremonial headdress, a symbol of strength and leadership, adorned with beads and feathers passed down through the generations. The crowd gasped. They had never seen her like this before. This was not the woman who had been cast aside, the woman they thought had lost. Amma walked with purpose, her every step resonating with the energy of a storm about to break. She moved past the villagers, who stared in awe. Whispers spread like wildfire, and the weight of her presence hung in the air. Something was different. Amma was no longer the broken woman they had expected. The power that once seemed far from her was now within her grasp, and the villagers could feel it. She reached the center of the gathering, her eyes scanning the crowd before landing on Ekwueme. His smile faltered as he saw her, and for the first time, doubt crept into his gaze. The villagers shifted uncomfortably, unsure of what to make of the transformation they were witnessing. With a deep breath, Amma stepped forward and addressed the crowd. "The time for silence is over. The truth must be heard." The words echoed in the stillness, and the villagers fell silent. Amma's voice rang out, steady and powerful, like the thunder before a storm. She did not raise it in anger. She simply spoke the truth. "For too long, you have been fed lies. You have been led to believe that Ekwueme is the true leader of this village, but he is not. His family has hidden their true origins, manipulating the very history of this land to control you all. They are not the rightful rulers. They never were." The words hit like a thunderclap. The villagers froze, their eyes wide with shock. Ekwueme's face paled, and for the first time, he seemed uncertain. He opened his mouth to speak, but the words caught in his throat. Amma stood tall, undeterred. "I know the truth of this land, of our people. Ekwueme has twisted it, rewritten it to suit his needs, but today we reclaim it." Ekwueme stumbled back, his confident posture cracking. He tried to speak, to defend himself, but no sound came. The truth was too much, and his words failed him. For the first time in his life, he was speechless. The power that had once flowed so freely through him was now slipping away. Amma did not wait for him to regain his composure. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the charm Nana Okoro had given her. It glowed faintly, its power swirling, in the air like the winds before a storm. Amma held it high, and the room seemed to quiet, the weight of its energy pressing down on the crowd. The air around her thickened, and the villagers could feel the shift. The charm pulsed with an ancient power, and the atmosphere grew heavy. Amma's heart beat with the rhythm of the land, and she called upon the force that had been with her ancestors for generations. Ekwueme tried to shout, to silence Amma once, and for all, but his voice was drowned out by the rising hum of the charm's energy. The villagers no longer listened to him. His attempts to maintain control fell flat, and for the first time, the truth could not be ignored. Amma's words rang out again, stronger than before. "Ekwueme's lies have held us in chains for too long, but no more. The power of the village belongs to its people. It is time for us to rise." The villagers, once loyal to Ekwueme, began to shift. Their eyes turned to one another, whispers spreading like fire. The truth was taking root in their hearts, and with it, a new understanding of their own strength. They had been deceived, but now they saw the truth, and the weight of their realization was undeniable. Ekwueme's face twisted with rage, but his anger was no longer enough. His once unshakable confidence had crumbled, and now he stood alone, in the face of a truth he could not escape. The villagers had turned against him. They no longer saw him as their leader, but as the man who had betrayed them. Amma's voice grew louder. "This village belongs to the people, not to a single man. We will no longer be ruled by lies." With a final, powerful gesture, she called upon the ancient power of the charm one last time. The air seemed to vibrate with energy as the village watched in awe. Ekwueme could no longer maintain his facade. His authority, once so strong, had shattered like glass. He was nothing without the lies he had told. The villagers rose as one, their voices united in strength. Ekwueme's fall was inevitable. His power had been built on deception, and now it crumbled to dust. He tried to shout, but no one listened. The village had reclaimed its true power, and Ekwueme, once the ruler, was nothing more than a fallen man. Amma stepped forward, her heart calm but filled with purpose. She had done what she set out to do. The village was free, and the truth had won. The charm glowed brightly in her hand, its power now fulfilled. The villagers cheered, their voices ringing through the air as they celebrated the end of Ekwueme's rule. And in that moment, the village knew that the power of the land, of their people, could never again be taken from them. Ekwueme stood at the edge of the village, the once proud leader now a broken man. The villagers gathered to watch his fall from power. His arrogance was gone, replaced with the cold reality of exile. As he was escorted out, his shoulders slumped, and his eyes no longer held the same fiery confidence. The chants of those who once revered him now echoed in the distance, a distant memory of his dominance. The villagers, free at last from his manipulation, looked on, some with sorrow, others with relief. The truth had triumphed, but the price was high. Ekwueme's fall left a void, a space filled with uncertainty. The balance of power had shifted, and it was up to Amma to lead them now. The ceremony for Amma's crowning was unlike any the village had seen before. The air was thick with anticipation, and the people stood in quiet respect as she approached the center of the gathering. But while the villagers admired her strength, the weight of leadership was clear on her face. It wasn't just a victory. It was a responsibility, a heavy mantle that pressed down on her every step. As Amma was crowned, the villagers cheered, but there were also murmurs of doubt. Some had followed Ekwueme for so long that they weren't sure they could follow someone new. The road ahead would not be easy. Amma's journey had only just begun. Victory, though sweet, was not without its burdens. As Amma stood tall, she realized the true cost of what she had won. The people were free, but the village was fractured. The trust that had once bound them was now broken. It wasn't enough to defeat Ekwueme. She had to rebuild everything he had torn apart. The task was harder than Amma had imagined. Some villagers resisted change, still loyal to the old ways, still fearful of the unknown. Others carried deep grudges, the scars of years under Ekwueme's rule. Amma could feel their eyes on her, the judgment in their stares. Yet she did not shrink from it. She knew that leadership wasn't about defeating one enemy, it was about uniting a people. Amma spent hours listening. She spoke with the elders, the youth, and the farmers. She learned their fears, their hopes, and their dreams. She made decisions that weren't always popular, but she knew they were the right ones. Slowly, trust began to form again, like the first shoots of grass after a long drought. But it would take time. The journey would not be quick. One evening, as Amma sat by the fire with Nana Okoro, she reflected on how far she had come. From the humiliation she had faced in the village square to the strength she now carried, it had been a long, hard road. Amma had always believed that defeating Ekwueme was the goal, but now she understood that the real challenge was in guiding the people. True leadership, she realized, was about service, not glory. It was about understanding the needs of the people and leading them toward a better future, not just showing strength. Nana Okoro's voice broke through her thoughts. "Power is fleeting, my child," she said, her words heavy with wisdom. "You have won, but remember, power is not for your own gain. It is for the people. Use it wisely, and you will find that true strength lies in serving them, not ruling them." Amma took in Nana Okoro's words, allowing them to settle in her heart. She understood now that leadership was not about power, it was about responsibility. The charm that had helped her defeat Ekwueme was no longer the symbol of her strength. The true strength came from her ability to lead with integrity, to guide the village through its struggles, and to keep its heart intact. The road ahead was not easy, but Amma was not afraid. She began to hold meetings, calling the people together, to hear their voices. She listened to their grievances, understood their pain, and worked with them to find solutions. Slowly, the wounds of the past began to heal. The village began to trust again. Amma's vision for the future became clear. She spoke of fairness, unity, and progress. She wanted a village where every voice mattered, where each person could contribute to the well-being of the community. The people, inspired by her leadership, began to work together toward a new beginning. But even as Amma led her people, she understood the true cost of power. She saw the sacrifices it required, the weight of every decision, and the responsibility to ensure that the village flourished. There would be challenges ahead, and not every decision would be easy. But she was ready. Amma's leadership was not just about taking charge. It was about the lessons learned along the way. The wisdom of the elders, the courage of the people, and the strength of her own heart. She would guide the village, not as a ruler, but as a servant of the people, always striving for fairness and unity. And so, under her leadership, the village began to heal. The harmony that had once been lost slowly returned, and the people worked together for a better future. Amma had earned their respect, but more importantly, she had earned their trust. The journey was long and the road ahead uncertain, but one thing was clear. A new chapter had begun. The village had been restored, not by the defeat of one man, but by the strength of a community united. And as Amma stood before her people, she knew that her true work had just begun. The village was stronger now, not because of her victory, but because of the unity she had fostered, the lessons she had learned, and the vision she had set for the future. The legacy of wisdom was not in her rise to power, but in her commitment to serving the people. At the village gate, Amma stood alone as the first light of dawn broke across the land. She watched the sun rise slowly, casting its warm glow over the earth. The breeze was soft, carrying whispers of a new beginning. Amma's thoughts were deep. She had fought, and now, in this quiet moment, she felt the weight of the journey she had walked. The villagers were still finding their way. They were adjusting to the changes, uncertain and hesitant. But Amma knew her role had only just begun. There would be no easy path ahead. Leadership was not a victory. It was a constant challenge. And she was ready. As the sun climbed higher, Amma thought of the battle she had won. Ekwueme was defeated, cast out, but the war was far from over. The real fight was just beginning. She had faced the darkness and come out stronger. But now she had to face the real challenge, rebuilding the trust that had been shattered. The road would be long, but she was not afraid. The lessons she had learned were now part of her soul. The power she had fought for was not in her hands alone. It was in the strength of the people, and she knew she would guide them to greatness, if they could learn to trust her. The village elders gathered one by one, their faces solemn as they spoke. Their words echoed in the air, powerful with truth. They spoke of the lies that had once ruled the land, the lies that had built the village's power, the lies that had divided them, that had kept them apart. But they spoke too of what Amma had done. She had stood against the darkness and brought the light. Her actions had restored balance, and now the people saw the value of honesty and unity. The elders told Amma that the way forward would not be easy, but with truth in their hearts, the village could rebuild, and they would rebuild not just as individuals, but as one. Amma listened carefully, her heart swelling with a new understanding. The victory was not just in defeating the enemy, it was in showing the people the power of resilience. Her victory was a testament to the strength within her to rise when others thought she was done. She realized now that true power was not in victory alone. It was in the ability to overcome, to keep moving forward when everything seemed impossible. The war had not been won in one battle. It was a war of persistence, of rising again, and again. She would not stop, no matter the challenge. A conversation with Nana Okoro made Amma think deeper. Nana Okoro, wise and old, spoke slowly, her words carrying the weight of generations. "Power, my child," she said, "is not something to be used carelessly. It must be used wisely. When you have power, you have the responsibility to use it for the good of the people. If you hold power with only your hands, you will crush what you hold most dear. But if you hold it with your heart, you will change the world. Amma understood. Power was not about control. It was about compassion, about using strength not for domination, but for understanding. She had the power now to lead, but the question was, how would she lead? Would she be the ruler who ruled with fear, or would she be the leader who guided with wisdom? She made her decision right then and there. She would lead with her heart, with fairness and compassion, and never forget the people she was meant to serve. The villagers were scattered, each with their own worries, their own fears. Amma knew the scars left by Ekwueme's rule ran deep, but she was determined she would speak to them, not with commands, but with respect. She gathered the villagers one by one and promised them a future built on trust. No longer would lies divide them. No longer would one man's ambition ruin what had been built. Together, they would rebuild what had been broken. The future would not be a place of fear, but a place of fairness. And Amma would be there, not to command, but to lead, with respect. Amma stood before them, her voice clear and strong. "We will honor our traditions," she declared, "but we must also move forward. We must honor the past, yes, but we cannot let it keep us from the future. The world will change, and we must change with it. We must grow together, or we will be lost." Amma's words were like a river cutting through the land. She knew the importance of holding on to the old ways, but she also knew that progress was the only way forward. The past was a guide, but the future was where they were headed. And together, they would walk toward it, hand in hand. No one would be left behind. As the sun climbed higher, Amma stood before the villagers, her gaze steady and strong. "In the face of darkness, we find our light," she said, her voice carrying over the crowd. The words were simple, but they were powerful. The villagers felt it. There was no longer any doubt. Amma would lead them through the trials that awaited them. She would guide them, not with an iron hand, but with wisdom, compassion, and heart. They would face their challenges together, and they would triumph. Amma's promise to her people was clear. She would not lead with force. She would lead with fairness. She would not force change. She would guide it. And in doing so, she would rebuild what was broken, piece by piece. Now, the village was united. The past was behind them, and the future was ahead. But the journey was just beginning. Amma knew that challenges would come. They always did. But as long as they stayed true to themselves, as long as they stayed true to each other, they would overcome them. The path forward would be difficult, but together they would walk it. The story ended as Amma stood tall, her heart full. Her journey had brought her here, but the real journey, the journey of leadership, of growth, of unity, had just begun. The village was no longer defined by lies and conflict. It was defined by truth, unity, and the strength of the people. And together, they would face whatever the future held.